people who do books at this point think that that's what and it's true. Publicists, they help with that stuff, but at this point, it is up to the writer.
But then they get so touchy when you step on their toes. Like it's like you're like contacting other people, and the publicists are like, no, but I was contacting this person, and you can't talk to this person at NPR because I'm already trying to set you up with this person.
You want to. It's got to be a relationship. So you want to talk with your.
I mean, I had explicitly that problem with the head of Houghton Mifflin's publicity when I hired a publicist. And it's your book, and you're in charge, and you have to say, what you need to do is be very clear. Say, what are you actually going to do? What do you really have time to do? Which calls are you going to make? And I mean, we ended up dividing it very, very clearly between, my publishing house publicists ended up specifically pitching to print book reviews, and actually specific television programs, and my hired publicist pitched to regional and national radio and other TV shows and the web, and then I did other stuff. And you just have to be very clear, and in the end, your interests are aligned, you both want the book to sell as many copies as possible, and it's your book.
Right. And that's the bottom line. Nobody's going to care as much as
the last thing you have to do is, and the reason you have to get this specific and to jump up and down is, the tendency, not out of malice, but out of just human nature, is if the publicity department of a publishing house thinks that you're going to take over, they will do less. They'll just pull back. They've got, every single person working there has much more work than they can possibly do. And if they think that you're taken care of, great, they'll put the resources someplace else. So you actually have to sort of almost, it's not a contract, but you have to be very, very explicit. And then you check back. It's not rude to call them up and say, how's it going? My publicist at my publishing house came to hate me, but in a nice way.
Right. But that's the thing, and I think after this we should go back to the sort of selling ideas part of it. But yeah, I mean, it is your book. You are the only person who's going to care as much as you do about it. Trying to get other writers to write about your book is pretty tough. And at this point, it's like writers just have to make the time to do the things for their book that are. I mean, now I'm like, I'm doing like 3 full-time jobs right now. One of them is trying to get my book out there, and you want your book to be out there, you just do it, and you got to assume that nobody's going to do it really but you.
Can I suggest something? It's an attitudinal thing that applies to making pitches and proposals and everything. Act like an established, accomplished professional, and you'll be treated like one, even if you aren't.
That's true. Yeah.
Along those lines, I mean, I think absolutely professionalism and persistence to a polite extent and all that. But the other thing is to, and this kind of gets back to, read the publication and know whether this is something like definitely don't take anything personally ever. I mean, that's what I try and live by, even though I obviously didn't today. But don't take it personally. And the fact that a given editor, producer, etc., doesn't think your story fits has probably, I mean, maybe overstating the case, has very little relationship with whether it's a solid story for someone else. And so I often sort of counsel my students, like, the best way to get into that publication or whatever that you really want to get into is to get into a bunch of publications that person reads and make them jealous. No, I'm serious. And it's like the whole tenure track. You guys know better than I. Like the whole tenure thing. You want tenure at an Ivy League school, you kind of have to go and get tenure somewhere else and kick everyone's ass. So you kind of have to do that. So don't sort of like get upset and what's that? I know I don't know anything about tenure, so I should shut up now. But in all seriousness, get to a point where you don't sort of like don't be Don Quixote and keep trying to be like, oh, I know this is right. I know it's right. I know it's right. I mean, persistence and passion is wonderful. Push it at something else, and you'll get back to that place.
So I just want to say we're like we have just like a couple minutes, and I just want to see if anybody else wants to try the quick pitch, just in case there are people who want the opportunity. Brian's being nudged.
Brian's already got a book going. All right, this is a. Well, I need to read it because I don't remember. This is actually a pitch that I wrote a little bit more than a year ago for Natural History. They actually got back to me after a year and said, no, we don't pay anymore, which is kind of, I didn't expect them to get back to me at all. But I'll just read it. I don't have my credentials or anything else in there. Raised in London during the early 20th century, John Daniel had a contented life with his adopted family. Even though he was fussy about food and could not bear to be left alone at night, he was a boisterous and playful little scamp who adored the many visitors who came to see him. Yet John
Can you read louder, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yet John Daniel is no ordinary child. As a baby, John had been torn away from his family in Africa and sent to Europe, where he eventually wound up entertaining crowds at Kensington department store in 1918. When Major Rupert Penny saw him performing there, he decided to purchase John and teach the lad good manners and a loving home. This would be a trying task, for John was not a human, but a young gorilla. Today, John can be seen in the Hall of Primates in the American Museum of Natural History. Known to visitors simply as specimen number 54084, he solemnly stares from behind the plate glass as if awaiting his surrogate mother, Miss Cunningham, to come and find him. How did the famous civilized gorilla become the now anonymous stuffed ape? When John became too much to handle, his owners started looking for people who would take him in. In 1921, John was sold to Ringling Brothers Circus in New York. Torn from the family that had taken him in, he was sent on a cold transatlantic journey that quickly deteriorated his health, and efforts to restore his vitality once he arrived in New York failed. He died during the last week of 1921 in the top room of Madison Square Garden, but a special arrangement made by the American Museum gave John a chance at a second life, even if he can no longer rejoice at the sight of the many visitors who come and see him daily.
I want to buy that book.
Yeah, that's tough. History is very hard.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard from most people.
Yeah, because, but, yeah, right, what's the news hook? So it's tough.